In the last video, we diagnosed that the mode selection switch, the air conditioning mode selection switch, which is defrost, high, auto, low, and off. There's a little fan symbol down on the bottom. That is the problem. So in this video, we're going to work on replacing this switch. Whenever you're working with anything behind the dash, always disconnect the battery. There are wires that are hot, have voltage in them, even when the key is turned off. The cigarette lighter is an example. So this is the ground. There's a minus sign there. There's a plus sign over there. I have color-coded cables. So the ground is black. It goes and it hooks on to the body, and then it hooks on to the motor. So just remove this battery strap. So I got the negative battery cable disconnected. I'm just going to put it down here so it doesn't accidentally reconnect with the battery. So in looking at the mode selection switch, it's mounted to this panel, this aluminum panel, and this is the console. It goes all the way back, the armrest, it goes all the way to the back seat, and it comes up here. So this presumably is attached to the console. This panel, you see a screw there, a screw there, there's another one right up here. That this thing is called the ski slope. You can see how it comes down from the windows and then bends. So it's called the ski slope, and it needs to come out so that we can disconnect the wires, for instance, like the cigarette lighter and the windows. We need to disconnect those so that we can get this out, and then we can lift out we can remove the entire console. The next thing you want to do before you start is get plenty of baggies with little Ziploc bags and marker pens, and as you take items off the car, store them in this bag. Be sure and zip it up and write what's on the what's in it, where they go. And then when you're reassembling, it may take a while. Keep in mind, it may take a while to get the car back together. So you may forget what goes where, but this makes it very easy to find the parts that you're working on. Another item is tape. I use white electrical tape and a magic marker. So underneath the console, or wherever there's a connector, electrical connector, you label both sides of it so that, and if you don't know what it goes to, give it a code number like A1 and label both sides of the connector A1, and then when you go to put the car back together, you know which connectors go to which terminals. Next, I took out the console cubby hole. There are screws, very easy to see where those are, and this little plastic thing just lifts out. Next, I'm going to disconnect the window switches. Now, the 4 switches for the windows are the same. The pins on the back are the same. You can switch them around. They're interchangeable. On the back, there are plugs. Let me see if I can get this out. Okay, right there. I pulled that out, and I pulled it I labeled it, and you can see it's the upper right hand side. So I labeled these plugs on a previous project for the window switches. If you don't do that, if you don't label them and you don't get them back in the right place, put the car back together and then the window switches are in the wrong place. This is the driver's side's on the passenger, etc. So you want to get these labeled, and then you just grab hold of them and wiggle them, and they pull off of the various switches. Here you can see one of my labels. This is the lighter, the wire that goes to the lighter, and right on that little spade there. So when I put the car back together, I won't have any problems getting the right wire in the right place. Here you can see the back of the window switches, and you can see that they're all the same. They're interchangeable. So that's why we were talking about labeling the sockets so you get them on the right place. I'm probably going to have the car apart for a while, so I'm going to take the window switches out of this key slope and plug them into the wires so that I can put the windows up and down and drive the car while I'm working on the air conditioning mode switch. I do want to mention the Jaguar Series 3 service manual has a section on console assembly removal. It's section 762501. It's in the body section of the manual. The problem is that the Series 3, the early cars and the later cars are different, and it's not clear which this is. So I wanted to just point this out, that it is in the manual. The other problem is there's no illustrations for that. This is the illustration for taking off the side casing or cheek panels, which is super easy to do, but removing the console is very difficult, complex, no illustrations. But I do want to show, it says, note, take care not to damage the fiber optic elements. I'll show you where that is in the car. And caution, ensure that the radio is adequately supported while you're removing the console. So, just wanted to point that out. The next thing we want to do is in the back of the console, we need to remove this window switch panel. There's two screws, one on either side, right here. Well, it took a lot of fiddling, but after you get these two screws out, you kind of lift up and pull it like this to tilt it, and it will come off, and it'll come away from the panel. And if you look in here, see those are the window switch plugs, just like up front. So we need to label those left and right so we get them on the right window switch. So down here, you see that screw right there? That's the one we're trying to get at. There's one on each side, and that's one of the main screws that holds the console in. Well, I got the screws out on either side, got this panel out, labeled the plug, and now you can see the console is loose in the back. So that's good. We're going to get the console out enough to slide it back so that we can get behind where that mode switch is. A little bit out of focus. So next we want to take off the knobs. They just pull straight off. Just put your fingers under them, pull them off, and they only go on one way, so you can't mess them up when you reinstall them. And inside, around the shaft, you can see that nut, and that's been a bit of a problem. This is the threaded collar that's behind the knobs and goes over the shafts of the two heater control switches. Some people can get these off with needle nose pliers or putting a screwdriver in one of the notches and tapping it and getting it to turn, but I did not have success with much of with doing that. There is a tool, and looks like that. You can see the little nibs on the bottom, and it's called a Mac T-handle specialty 2-prong socket SC18. And I hate to buy a tool that I'm only going to use once, so I made this. It was a bushing or a spacer that I got at Home Depot or Lowe's for a couple dollars, and the drawers they have of all the little nuts and bolts and pieces. I used a hacksaw to cut down on either side, and then a grinder to get it so that it has these two little nibs. So to get the console the rest of the way out, there are two screws behind the this plate, the radio plate. So after I remove those slotted nuts there, you can see this is loose here. This is a replacement radio that slid in, so I need to slide the radio out, and this radio cover plate, you can see it wiggling there, will come out and I can get to those screws. So I got the two screws. There was one there, this is behind the radio plate, and one over there. And now you can see the whole console is loose. I take these two screws out here, and hopefully the console will lift out. So after removing those screws at the top of the little package shelf, the whole package shelf just lifts out, and you can get to the back of the switches, the gas gauge switch. There's a large harness on it that you can unplug to just remove that completely. And now I think the console is ready to slide back. Okay, where the little tray and the 4 gauges and the clock, I was able to just set it down here vertically. It's resting on the floor. Everything is still connected. And then I was able to, the console right here, this little edge was in front of the gear shift quadrant. Just had to kind of work that up. Now the console is slid back a couple inches, and that's what I needed to be able to get to the mode control switch, which is right there. So with the 4 nuts and the 4 corners removed, now you can see the sheet metal that's the radio goes through, and there is the mode control switch on the back of that. And when I first took it off, I noticed that one of the wires was very, very loose, so there's a possibility that there was just a loose connection, but I'm going to go ahead and replace the micro switches. You see, if you can see down in there, right See if I can point to it right there. Those two black things, those are micro switches. So that's the goal, to replace those. The next thing I'm going to do is very, very carefully document which wire goes where. You can see the upper forward corner of the switch has two brown wires with yellow tracers. So I've got to document where every wire goes, so when I put it back together, I get them in the right place. I mentioned earlier that I would show the fiber optics where it said not to break the fiber optics. So you can see this is the panel beside the radio with the temperature and the mode selector. And on the back, these things, there's no light bulb in it. This is a fiber optic cable that runs down, and I'm looking, there's the gear shift quadrant right down there, that silver thing. That's where there's a light bulb in there, and you can see the little tubes coming out the front. They look like wires. Those are the fiber optic cables that take light, and the light beam travels down those fiber optic cables, comes up here, it comes up to the little lights behind the ignition switch, the light switch, etc. So that's what's going on with fiber optic cables. The next step is on the left side. This is the temperature control knob, where it goes from 65 to 85, something like that. There are two screws, one there and one down here. We're going to take those out and then push the temperature control knob back behind this panel. Once again, the goal is to get this steel sheet metal panel out with the mode control switching behind it. The next step is to label everything where it goes onto the switch, and I made a diagram that shows the switches and the wire collars, and wrote a number or letter, numbers towards the front of the car, letters towards the rear of the car, and labeled everything. There is a little, right here on the switch, there is a pneumatic switch with a little tube on the top and bottom, and so you see this is the upper hose and the lower hose is down below. So the whole switch plate is loose except for one thing. Remember how I told you these fiber optic cables provide light? They're very fragile, and if you pull them out here, they'll likely break. So you can see on the sheet metal piece, there's a little slot that they go through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut right here. I'm going to cut a little exit so I can just lift those fiber optic cables out without disconnecting them or breaking them. So now the panel is out of the car, and this is where the temperature selection knob, this is the mode control knob over here, and on the back you can see right there are two micro switches, and down here there are two micro switches. And so let's see if I can show you this. When you turn the knob, you can see inside there are little cams that turn, and those little cams activate those four micro switches. So the micro switches you need, you can get them at Jaguar.com, Jaguar.com. series2-aire.com, and here are the micro switches, and you can see the price that it is at this time. But when you order them, you need to talk to Gary at Jaguar, because there are different styles. Here you can see the little red plunger on the bottom. That's what activates the switch. That's what that cam is doing. So this one has 3 prongs, and there's another one. So these two are alike. This one has 2 prongs, and the prong is up at the top. And this one has 2 prongs, and the prong is down at the bottom. So one of these is normally open and one's normally closed. Don't know which is which. But there are 3 different styles, 4 switches that you need, and Gary can supply those in a kit. Now, it's important to get the right switch in the right place and the right orientation. So what I've done is, these are my new switches, and I've got them stacked like that, and they match these switches over here, and these 2 switches over here are in the same orientation and match these 2 switches. So very important to get them in the correct spot, the correct orientation, so when you put the wires back on, the right wire is connecting to the right type of switch. When you disassemble the switch, the gold part here stays on the bracket and the pneumatic switch over there. The axle, the cams, you can see the cams moving. So that all stays put. You don't disturb that. You take out the screw. There are 2 screws, one there, one there. One comes up from the bottom, one goes down from the top. And there is a little washer in between them. So when they're stacked together, little washer in the middle, a little bolt and nut on either side, and then you just bolt them back in there. So in a minute, when we get the micro switches mounted in the sheet metal piece, we're going to be testing them. So on the micro switch is a little plunger there, and I've got an ohm meter hooked up, and so with my finger off the button, it's saying OL, open line. There's there's no connection, and now I'll push the little plunger in, it goes to 0. That means there is a connection with no resistance. So that's what you want to see. When you push the little button, it goes to open line, or it goes to 0. And we're going to be testing it once we get it mounted to make sure we have good connection. So when you get them mounted in, these screws, you want to make sure they're really tight, nice and tight. You don't want to break anything, but you don't want anything shifting. So get those nice and tight. They are nylock nuts, so you don't need a lock washer or anything like that. They stay put, but just get them nice and tight. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put the electrical leads on the from the one on the top to one of these on the bottom. We're going to turn the knob, and we should see the multimeter jump from open line to 0 resistance if those little plungers are engaging the cam correctly. Okay, I got my electrical leads connected, and I'm going to turn the knob right there. You can see that in this position there's 0 resistance, and I turn it to that one and it goes to open line. That's what you want to see. That means that this switch that I'm testing, the little plunger, is engaging those cams correctly, and it's going to be work correctly once it's in the car. I'm going to test all of those switches just to make sure the plunger is engaging correctly. Okay, the switch is all back together. The micro switches are in place. The nuts and bolts are snugged down. I used the multimeter to check that the switches are working when I turn the knob. So this is all ready to put back in the car. So as you put things back together in the car, I have 3 suggestions. The first is, when you get to a point where things are getting back together and hooked up, I suggest hooking the battery up, starting the car, and testing. Put the knobs on and test the switch and make sure that this is all working correctly before you finish up putting everything back together. So if you have to take it apart again, you're not quite so far down the road. So that's the first thing, is to test before you get it all put back together. Then after your test, disconnect the battery again, because you got a lot of loose wires here, and then you can proceed. The second thing is to straighten up any bad wiring or loose connections. There's a whole lot of stuff going on in here, and so anytime you have access to an electrical connection, then you want to take the connection apart, check it for corrosion, clean it, put it back together tight, etc. So these are my radio wires. They're all labeled, and I got to get them back together, but just check for anything that doesn't look right. If a previous owner has made a mess of things, now's a good time to sort of straighten that stuff out while you have it apart. The third thing, and this is kind of a personal note, when I was trying to put everything back together here, there are 2 screws up here, and there are 2 screws behind that plate, and 2 bolts, I should say, and that holds everything together. And I'd get one screw in, and I couldn't get the other ones in, and I finally got, after an hour or so, I got them all in the right spots and tightened down, and then I couldn't get the little knobs behind here on, so I cut a corner. The 2 screws here, I just left them out. They're behind that panel. So this is still tight. This is still tight. Everything is tight. I think it was just a little overkill from the factory. The worst that can happen is I'll develop a squeak and have to fix it later. But just a note, while you're putting things back together, just do the best you can. This is a 46-year-old car, and sometimes things just don't quite go back together, so just use your ingenuity. It's always such a good feeling when you finish a project. I started this last fall, and it's now June, so it takes a while for me to get projects done, but it's very rewarding, and everything is working correctly. So here's our mode control switch off, low. You can probably hear the vent running, the fan running. Auto, high, and defrost is the vents up on the top, and the temperature control works. Everything is working. And you may have noticed that I have these toggle switches here. They are the AC compressor. There's a switch that controls that, so I can turn the AC compressor off on days when I just want fresh air without the compressor working. And the other switch is the fresh air and recirculate. Those are controlled automatically by the original system, but now I can just flip a switch and control it myself. This light, you may have noticed, that is the parking brake. I'll turn the parking brake off there. And then so it's a nice bright light so I don't accidentally drive off with the parking brake pulled on. So there we have it. We've completed the project. I want to once again give a shout out to Jaguar.com. They're Jaguar AC specialists, and that is where I got the parts. And Gary was very kind to help me along the way. I'd give him a call and he would coach me through the process, and so I'm very much appreciative of his help. And that's where I got the parts as well. And there is their amplifier. I installed one of those as well. So there you have it. Thank you for watching.